Good morning. It's Saturday the 24th, and we're just getting up basically at the moment. For some of the kids are still in bed. Richie's gone off to work to the NHS. I'm just here sitting in the study going through a few notes. This is a little bit of a general video today actually, covering a broad range of the usual topics, but I thought I'd just share them in terms of updates and things where I am. First of all, on the high street issue, there's been lots of publicity on the high street with Black Friday, as it's known these days. This event that sort of we've inherited from the United States just after the Thanksgiving, where everything in all the consumable retailers out there are busy knocking down prices by 50% or 70% or 30% or whatever they feel they need to. I think I'll wear my glasses actually. No, I'll take them off when we go. Yeah, and from what I understand in the reports that are coming out so far, well, first of all, let's say Black Friday. It seems to be now Black Week or even 2 weeks, because trading on all these specials now sort of started a week ago already. It looks like they're ongoing for the next week or two, probably leading up to Christmas. That's how it's developing. It's becoming it's developed from one day in the month to virtually the month for all this activity going on, and it's predominantly online trading. There are national retailers that are also obviously selling out of their retail stores as well, and there are those that are saying they're not going to get involved in it, but then they're giving discounts in other ways. They might be giving extra product free, or buy one get one free, or they're giving vouchers, or whatever the case may be. So there's all kinds of things going on in that respect. Report so far is that the transaction numbers are up for Black Friday, but the actual total amounts in pound sterling is down. It's about 10% up in terms of transactions, and it's about 12-13% down in actual pound sales for this event. I think the British consumer is going to be watching their purses a lot more in terms of purchases all the way up to Christmas, which is a sensible thing to do. Let's be realistic. With regards to high street, there's been a lot more. I've had comments coming back to me on the high street saying, "I'm a dinosaur, wake up, the high streets are dead." And thank you very much for those. They're very kind comments from some of you on YouTube. This old man doesn't know what he's talking about. It's all about online these days. Yeah, I know. Yes, sure. Well, we all like to buy online occasionally. But like I said in one of my videos before, if we end up as a society where we just do everything online, what a sad place the world will be. What a sad place the world will be. That's all I've got to say about that, really. But listening to the radio today when I was taking Richie into work, they were talking about the champions in the high street, and there was people being nominated by listeners who phoned in villages and towns around the country, and it was a nice broadcast, this on the BBC Five channel, and people were nominating their local butcher who's been there for 150 years, and it passed down from generation to generation, who still has a very broad customer base, and just goes the extra mile compared with the supermarkets. He does a better job. His quality is good. His service is good, and they trust him for buying their meat from him in that particular town. And it goes on and goes on and goes on. It talked about numbers of towns that have done something about their high street, like Altrincham in Cheshire. How that used to be a town that was boarded, and I know Altrincham because I used to live there for a time as a boy with my mum and dad. But it was a sort of 10 years ago. It was boarding up as a high street. There was things were closing down. Now the local people have started opening their businesses up in the town and making it work again. And it's the locals that are doing it. And it was pleasing to hear this, because this was the whole point I was making about how high streets have got to be sorted in the future. And it is all about that. It is all about the local communities getting involved in making them work, and not, trying to rely on government. Forget it. Yeah, government have got to do something about business rates, yes, for sure, but that's all they can do, and they've got to do that. National chains, forget about it. They're not going to show interest in the high streets. Their investment, they're still investing in out-of-town retail parks at this moment in time. But the real development is taking place on the online activities, obviously, and how they get more successful at delivering on that. So that's where their investment is going. So you don't rely on them for your high streets. I think, so that's clearly a success story, and I think as that becomes more and more high streets will start doing it, which is pleasing. What else can I say about the high streets? Well, I'll just keep putting that message out there and start working on high streets where I see opportunity to improve them and fix them, by taking the message to them and helping those locals get their high streets sorted out. When it comes to the politicians, I've been listening to this Brexit stuff again in more and more detail, and again it just struck me as, everyone is. Theresa May has sorry, I'm rushing around on these topics, but Theresa May is taking this bad deal, as it's being known, to the nation, and now she's taking it to get a final decision from all the countries of the European Union, and it doesn't look like Spain are going to be in agreement with it, which is going to put a kibosh on it anyway. But if Spain do come round, or get influence to go with it, and she's still got to come back and get it through Parliament, but she's presenting it as this is the only deal or no deal, which is ridiculous, because there are other options that could still be put into practice, quite honestly, despite the fact that the European Union say there's no more room for negotiation. The second thing is, she makes the point that crashing out now they like to use this word crashing, crashing, negative, everyone's going to get hurt, leaving the European Union and having no deal is just a no-go. And I want to talk about this for a little while, because it's important to get this point across. Obviously, walking away from the European Union without a deal is going to create some pain initially. Of course it will, because it means we've got to start from scratch in the UK with setting up agreements with the EU and countries in the EU for that matter. But likewise, so has the EU got to do the same with us, and countries in the EU have got to do the same with us. So countries that in particular have a great deal of trade with us, that sell a lot of things to us, like the Germanys and the France and so on, will be priority. And obviously what they'll want to do is get going and make it happen, as will we. But I think we've got to be, these are all this is all politicians and their rhetoric to try and frighten everybody to saying it's the end of the world, we're going to fall off the cliff. Planes are going to fall out of the sky, they're not going to be able to take off. There's going to be all this, nobody's going to come into port with goods, we're not going to have any medicines. All this stuff has got, it is absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. There are businesses, yes, there are some businesses who say something like the same as the politicians, and these are the businesses that are quite honestly too lazy to think about the future in any other way. And then there are other businesses, and I quote James Dyson as one, who looks at the future continually, who looks at the opportunities going forward, and makes the reference that the pain is worth the gain in going forward in this development. And I think if one really wants to consider one's future for one's children and one's grandchildren, one should look at what I'm saying with regards to the no deal, because a no deal is still better than the current bad deal. And it doesn't mean there can't be any future deals going forward. I mean, the point is this is a journey we're embarking on. We're talking about changing society, how we want to live as the United Kingdom, as sovereignty. We're in a state where we can make our own rules and regulations and trade with who we like in the world, and make our own laws and control our own borders and do all these things. This is what we want to be. We don't want to have a country which is basically ruled by bureaucrats sitting in Brussels who make the rules for us. Now, if a percentage of the population feel it's the only way to have bureaucrats in Brussels making our rules, because that's what everyone else is doing, and it's safe. It's the safe approach, because that's all we've known for the last number of decades. It's not the route forward, in my view. It's not the route forward. And I think it will become evident in time when other countries in the European Union will have a similar view as they have now. I mean, the reason why the European Union are giving us leeway on this current bad deal with the border control, with freedom of movement, is because it's not just the UK that's had concerns with the freedom of movement. Other countries in the European Union have got a similar problem with the freedom of movement, and it's the same scenario. But like I've said in my previous video, it's either way how this goes, it'll still come out in the end as being right. We'll evolve to go into the right mode for where our country needs to be. At the moment, we're looking short term. We're looking at short term solutions. We're looking at, is this going to damage jobs in the short term? Is this the best deal in the short term? And in the short term, it probably is. Although this deal is probably, if we're going to have this bad deal as a choice, then we should have stayed in the first place, probably, because at least we could have remained in the European Union and had some control over the rules and regulations of what we're being asked to do now. So, anyway, that's the European Union. What else have we been talking about over the months? South Africa, yeah, that's an interesting one. I've heard nothing really coming through in the news on South Africa over the last few months. It's been relatively quiet. These land grabs have not been hitting the headlines. Certainly, there's not been so much report on violence recently. And I asked the question of a colleague of mine in South Africa: Is things getting better? Is Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, is he starting to get things right? Are things starting to work? Are things starting to happen? This is the phone call I had yesterday with him. Have a listen to this.
Hi, Simon. How are you?
Hi, Henny. How are you?
Sorry, man. We keep on missing each other.
Yes, I know. Look, I understand you're busy rushing around. I'm busy rushing around. So, yeah, and we're,
And you guys are busy with Brexit.
Oh God.
I see your Prime Minister's running for money now.
Oh my God. We're going to become, the way she wants us to behave, we're going to become a yes country that just has to follow rules set by somebody else, That's how they want it to work. I mean, I've never heard anything so ridiculous in all my life. Look, I'm sure it won't happen that way. This common sense will prevail, but I mean that's simply what it boils down to. That's the proposal that she has on the table,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, my reason for phoning you, trying to get hold of you a couple of weeks ago, I was just going to
Yes.
catch up and see how you were doing, how it was going over there, really, because it's been there's been nothing on the news about Cyril
No, it's all
Ramaphosa or
quiet.
South Africa, and I just wondered how
That's
things
all
have.
quiet now. That's
Yeah.
all quiet now.
Yeah.
It's all quiet now. I don't know if he's scared of Trump now because he took Trump was on.
Yes,
Him and Trump had words.
I know.
Okay, and yeah, and then Mr. Malema also said to Trump, "Keep your business out of South Africa. You don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
Sort your own country out. We don't need your help."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the wrong note to say that.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when is the election in
March next year.
March next year?
March next year.
Oh, that's an interesting month, March. That's when we leave the European Union as well.
When you leave the union as well.
Yeah. But has the violence subsisted? Is there less of it going on in the farms and things like that now?
There's less violence now. I think there's far less violence now.
Right.
I think Ramaphosa is doing a lot of right. He's not a magician. We can't expect miracles overnight. But he's doing a lot of the right things. So there's more control. There's less fraud and less bloody corruption and less violence and less bloody murders. There's still, but it's less.
That's good.
And the overall state of mind of the people is also in a better state.
Oh, that's good, Henny. Well, I always had a little bit of confidence in Ramaphosa in terms of an individual. My concern was could he influence everything else around him? More than anything else.
Correct. And he's battling a bit,
Yeah.
He's battling. That's why he can't move too fast with his moves, because if he moves too fast, he won't be president next year.
Sure.
And if he can come in March, after March, they say things will start happening fast.
What's the general feeling on the ground though? Do they think ANC will he get in?
No, the ANC will definitely come in again, but Ramaphosa I think will come in as well.
Yeah.
The feeling on the ground is he will definitely come in.
And he won't he won't be forced to make any arrangements to stay in by.
Conditions and that. No,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
no.
Good. Well, that's good.
No, I think he will come in alone.
Well, that's positive. That's good.
That is very positive.
Yeah.
From where we were and where we can go to, we know the country, we know all the bloody potential of this country. It's endless. So if we can get it right, hell, it'll be the most beautiful country in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it still is. I mean, in many respects, it is that now. Oh, well, that's great news to know.
Well, there you go. I mean, that sounds positive, doesn't it? Quite honestly. I mean, I think there is still concerns about the future in South Africa for those living in South Africa. What's the future going to be like? Are we still going to have our land? Are we going to be forced out of our properties without compensation? Are we going to be safe? Is it going to be safe for our children and grandchildren? I think it's understandable all these anxieties that are out there as well, and I guess they just aren't being reported on in the UK and in Europe at the moment because of all of the stuff going on here. But based on just what one person is saying, and it sounds like it's Cyril is starting to make some headway with control on some of the negatives that have been going on. We'll obviously still have to wait and see how things progress, and see how successful he is in his election next year in March as well. It's going to be an interesting month, March next year, 2019, on a number of fronts with what we've got over here in the UK and what's going on over there. I think realistically we've got to keep calm heads. I think the divide in the world these days is not so much between rich countries and poor countries. The divide is more within those countries themselves these days. There's divides coming between those that have and those that have not, and it's not just so much where I'm talking about wealth. It's to do with knowledge, education, and understanding. If I look at the technical divide in education, for example, the understanding of modern digital commerce and the way of life in dealing with situations, be it finance, be it shopping, be it health, be it what, digitally doing it from your home or from wherever you do it, those who can and those who cannot. There's a significant divide in this area, and that's what's causing the, if you like, the rift between BREXIT, what caused the referendum result in the UK, which caused the voting in of Donald Trump in the USA, because there is such a lack of the understanding of where the world is, where the country is. Those who understand the dynamics of the digital age we're in and can work and live with it, and those that still have difficulty in grasping it. That's where I think our divides are these days, and which is causing this misunderstanding within our societies, and why we have these situations, because they are there. There's no doubt about it. But we seem to have this view in the UK that everything is dependent on the politicians and only the politicians. And let's think about it. The politicians are there to serve us, the people. If we want to trade with country A, country B, country C, country D, that's up to us in society, in business, in commerce, to do these things. It's not up to the politicians. Politicians follow behind and must make sure that then our legislation works in support of what we are trying to achieve, or not work, whichever the case may be. But they don't decide who we trade with. They don't decide what we eat. They don't decide how we educate our children, how we look after our elderly. We decide that, and our politicians must follow us, not the other way around. And I think our society must get to grips with that and understand that. That's in this country, it's in the United States, it's everywhere. Society must set the rules in that respect. And that's all I've got to say. Anyway, have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.